Hi.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I would take the time to become a doctor, but I just don't have the patience. And I come to you live from Crater Valley on the moon. In my much more subdued introduction, given the fact that my microphone likes to cut out when I go all high-pitched lately with my on the moons. Yes, we return once again. I'm here with Dogcat Fox and a Pepperjack and all of you into the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Thursday evening. Tracheotomy Thursday. I don't know. It's the first medical term that started with a T I can think of. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Thursday. I'll get into the rationale behind choosing tonight's presentation in a moment. But first, who's joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening? Do I sound a little like William Shatner or something when I say that? This beautiful Thursday evening. Spock. It's a beautiful Thursday evening. I don't know. Kiefer Dam, good evening. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, as always, for providing the links to the GoFundMes and fundraisers for our friends AJ, Roan Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. Guys, please take a look at those if you have the opportunity. And if you can donate, please do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would as well be appreciated. So thank you for that. And thank you, Kiefer Dam, for, as always, providing those. Tier Alexander, good evening. Cynic, good evening. Mike R., good evening. Fun Time Bats, good evening. Kiro Soldier, good evening to you. Noah Sencio, good evening. Advocatus Diaboli, good evening. Mr. E, good evening. Josh Hammond, good evening to you. Aren't you glad you're doing another TED Talk, Scribe Light now? Always. It gives me meaning to my life. Mr. E, good evening. Some Namnul Nation, good evening. Who else is here? Full Metal Joker, good evening to you. Shell D, good evening. Angelverse, good evening. Who else? The Best Remy, good evening. The Luke Skywalker 2, good evening to you. See, I can rhyme a little bit. Shadowclaw, ooh, to you. Attack Alpaca, good evening. Corey Suzuki, good evening. Vader 35, good evening. Dylan Farnham, I am gay. Well, congratulations. John Trioxin, good evening. Chicago Mike, good evening. Shio Gorath, good evening to you. Corey Suzuki, again, thank you so much. What do you mean second stream today? I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't do something. It might be unlisted now. Yeah, you might have had to be on the old Lords of the Night Discord to see a link posted now, because I think I've hidden that. Anyway, yeah, it was a secret stream. Daryl Odell, good evening to you. Lady Stefano, good evening. Failure B, good evening. Oh shit, this is live. I know, tell me about it. Every time I go live, I think to myself, oh shit, what am I going to do this time? Ryan R, good evening. Joel McLaughlin, good evening. Joel, has it been a while? I feel like it's been a while, or maybe you've been lurking a while or something. I don't recall saying your name out loud in quite a while. Hope you're doing well. Angelverse, again, thank you so much for the lovely, dancy, happy Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow.
No, there's a drunken uncle, Dogcat Fox, who joined me on Tuesday, along with Sinatra Says, for the debate stream. Oh boy, that was fun. Wasn't that fun? Pissed Off Shih Tzu, good evening. Mark Smart, good evening. And Failure B clarifies, usually I catch you late. LMFAO. Well, you're right on time. Uh-oh. Is the audio glitching for anyone else? This is exactly what I was trying to avoid before, wasn't it? Okay. Well, let me reset some things. Good golly, Miss Molly. Okay, well, I've put things back to where they were before. I don't know what's going on. How's it sound now? So testing. 1, 2, 3. The audio is glitching. Good now. Okay, fine now. All right, so all the things that I did, thinking that I was going to be fixing something earlier on a stream that doesn't really exist anymore, well, I just reset it all. So, still glitching? Oh, great. Okay, well, what can I do in the short time that I have here without um I don't know what else to do. Uh, I apologize for those of you listening in the future. Maybe I can come back and edit. Do I sound better? Do I sound worse? Audio crackling, choppy, might be a hardware problem. I don't know how it could be a hardware problem at this point. Getting worse. Oh, great. Better, worse. Everybody says different things. I'm getting mixed signals here, guys. Better for now. You sound a bit better. Oh, there it is. Better now. It's stopped for now. Maybe your Yeti's giving up and you get a new mic. Reboot, clear cookies, better. Okay. Are we okay now? Are we all right? In and out. We're good. In and out, better. See, this is what I was trying to avoid earlier by doing the sound test stream because I wasn't sure what the quality of things were. And I got all this assurance by myself and others. Okay, seems better. Okay, well, without further ado, let's continue as we are and hope that we don't have any other audio issues going forward. I could always restart my software if needs be, but all right. So, if something does go drastically bad, please do let me know. I don't want to try to do a stream if I can't be heard or if it's just like annoying people. Not my intention. Anyway, until I'm told otherwise, let's talk about tonight's presentation, specifically the title as it caught my attention. Why medical training should incorporate LGBTQIA plus needs. Why medical training should incorporate LGBTQIA plus needs. All right, so when I saw this title, I had many questions because my thoughts went to, well, under what circumstances would someone who falls within any of those numbers of demographics, why would they need special medical training to be done on their behalf? And out of all the demographics in that list, the only one that made any sense to me in sort of an abstract way would be transgender. Because if someone has had particular surgeries or they are on particular hormones, then certainly in a medical situation, perhaps there would have to be some kind of special medical training or awareness or something. But outside of that one demographic in the list, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, well, what is the biological medical difference fundamentally? I mean, person to person, it's going to be different, of course, between a straight man and a gay man. I mean, your sexual orientation is effectively ephemeral. It doesn't define something about you biologically all by itself. So anyway, this is the question I had in my mind. Like, okay, I don't know what special medical needs would be necessary for someone that falls within one of these demographics, aside from, again, under particular circumstances, I assume, people who are transgender. But then I thought, okay, well, maybe it's mental health training, right? Maybe medical training is sort of like a mental health thing. But even then, I thought, well, to assume that someone is just inherently needing of mental health care because they happen to be not straight, even though I've never quite understood why transgender is in that group, because being transgender does not define one's orientation. You could be straight and transgender or gay and transgender, but that's a whole other subject. Anyway, all these questions came to my mind and I need answers, and presumably our speaker will have them for us. Thank you, Keeverdam. Maybe you should get a new mic, though. I miss you shouting on the moon. I do too. I am thinking about it. And thank you, Keeverdam. Appreciate it. Very generous of you. And Jim Heelis, who is also here. Jim Heelis, good evening to you. The gay man needs a proctologist more often. Oh, Jim, that's a low blow. Jim Heelis has recommended I get a $350 microphone. Or at least that's the one he threw my way. Like, I don't know if I need a $350 microphone. I might invest in a new microphone soon. If I can see, it's the crapshoot of trying to make it work. I actually bought a new microphone not that long ago, and I couldn't get it to work properly. So I ended up just giving it to my sister as like a birthday gift. I mean, it was secondhand, but I mean, it was just out of the box. It wasn't like I'd used it for a year or something. It was within a couple of days. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So, yes, let's find out from Dr. Erica Ann Sullivan about what special considerations are necessary for medical training in LGBTQ plus IA thing. Tonight's bingo card is bingo card C. C as in Dr. House MD, which was the winner of the poll on Twitter or X to decide what this week's bingo card would be. If you'd like to join in on the bingo card poll each week, amongst several other things I may post on X over the week, you can follow me on scribe_light on X. All right. So with all that as preamble, let's get into this. This one runs just under 12 minutes at 11:34. Start off with a few seconds for a sound test. Boy, I love sound today. And if you guys can hear it, we will proceed.
The Association of the American Medical Colleges.
The Association of the American Medical Colleges. You guys hear that okay? Also, I have to say that it was not my intention to 2 weeks in a row pick a speaker who had interesting colored hair. That just happened to be the case. Now, I could chalk this one up to just, coincidence, accident, whatever. If next week I have a speaker with like green hair or something, you might rightfully accuse me of starting a pattern, but we'll take that in its stride. Let's see. Sounds good, says Shadowclaw. It's good, says Shell D. 5x5, says Tier Alexander. Let's see. All right. So with that, the American Medical Association of College, what was it again?
Of the American Medical Colleges estimates that by the year 2034, the United States may face a shortage of up to 48,000 primary care physicians.
A shortage of 48,000. Okay, and as what's the usual healthy total?
Even now, gaining access to primary care is very challenging in Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know much about Salt Lake City except from what I learned from SLC Punk. Still a great movie.
Because the supply of primary care clinicians has not kept up with the population boom along the Wasatch Front.
Okay, so everybody in Salt Lake City or the environs therein is suffering from a lack of primary medical care. Why? I honestly don't know. Has there been some kind of like specific reason that there's been a downturn in primary care physicians or just primary care physicians in Salt Lake City and the surrounds?
Finding quality medical care can be particularly difficult for members of the LGBTQIA+ community.
All right, and that's why I'm here. Tell me why. Why?
Especially in Utah, because many providers don't have experience treating these folks.
Treating these folks. Okay, well, again, I have to ask, aside from the T in LGBTQIA+, etc., what is the biological difference between a gay man and a straight man when it comes to medical care?
As a primary care physician who specializes in LGBTQIA+ health.
Oh, okay. Well, at least we have an expert here.
I am one of only a handful of physicians in Utah who offers this care.
What is specialized about this care specifically? I mean, and I know we're not even a minute into this, and so I'm being rhetorical and I'm hoping for some answers because I honestly don't know. But let's go over to the bingo card real quick and just remind ourselves what we are listening for over the course of the presentation. Remember, this is bingo card C. C as in Dr. Gregory House. Yes. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, word salad, mind reading or assumes motives, a list, marginalized or marginalization. I think that's effectively been implied here, but I'll wait and see if she uses the phrase. Patriarchy, contradicts own point or argument. Feminism, attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. Systemic or institutional. That might also be implied here, but we're early on. An anecdote that probably never happened. White supremacy. Childhood or family anecdote, not yet. Leaves out vital context. We'll see. I'm hoping for some active examples. Weightless example or non sequitur. Sales pitch for product or service. I think she just did in saying I'm one of only some handful of people that provide this service in the Salt Lake City area. So I'll circle that one, and free space because it's free. Privilege, that also might be implied. We'll see. Collectivize his own demographic. Well, I'm I'm not going to say that being a doctor who provides this service puts her into, well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe she'll get something else. If she doesn't, we'll consider it later. Self-vilification or wretchedness, economic disparity, it's possible. Benevolent condescension, plays victim, deceptive statistics. I don't. Well, I guess it's not really a statistic. I'm curious to know why the number of primary care physicians has dropped. I think she started out saying nationwide by 48,000. Like what are the causes or presumed causes? But that's nothing deceptive about it so far. I guess it depends on if she comes back and gives us a reason why it's relevant. And if she doesn't, then it becomes a weightless example. And lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. I think, again, that might already have been mentioned effectively with her saying that most primary care physicians don't know how to deal or treat people like this. But we'll see. Anyway, so far on the board, we have free space, sales pitch for product or service. Let's keep going.
Unfortunately, there are not enough clinicians who are adequately trained in this field.
What does that mean to be adequately trained? I need you to describe and quantify what adequate training is when it comes to people who are not straight for the most part. Again, transgender is not an orientation.
Which means that for those who identify as queer, which is a synonym I'm going to use for LGBTQIA+.
I appreciate your brevity. However, it doesn't. I've never understood why T is included in all those other letters. Of everything else in that cluster of demographics, it's the one that does not belong. It doesn't define your orientation. But then again, they added Q for queer, which could mean anything, basically anything that's not straight, I guess. Anyway.
Because I like reclaiming this word, and LGBTQIA+ can be a bit of a mouthful.
She said you like to reclaim that word. Oh, how brave of you. How brave.
May not be getting the health care they need and deserve.
Okay. What health care do they need? What health care do they deserve? And here's the thing. If she's going to mask getting specific about healthcare needs amongst an entire set of demographics and just call it queer, I don't know if that's going to be helping things.
Until I started seeing these patients, I had received no formal education, either in medical school or residency in queer health.
Queer health. All right. We are now 1:30 into her talk, and I'm counting down the minutes until I hear something specific as to what that's supposed to mean. And as always, I apologize for the constant stopping, but I have to because A, YouTube, and B, I want to order my thoughts.
Now, however, it constitutes about 70% of my clinical practice.
Because you're a specialist and you advertise that way. Okay. And
how did I get here?
You are advertising yourself as an expert for a very small demographic of the population that is looking for constant affirmation. I guess.
Well, in my third year of family medicine residency, I was given an opportunity to see a patient for gender-affirming hormones.
Okay. And do I feel like I had just a little bit of a psychic moment before? Okay, so you've got a patient who is chemically altering their body chemistry, right? All right. Of course, this is the one instance out of every demographic in that cluster that you could say, sure, maybe you'd have to have some kind of specialized awareness or training in dealing with medical issues with someone who's taking hormones to try to not reverse, but to blunt their natural bodily inclinations. Okay, what does this have to do with any of the other demographics in regards to sexual orientation? I'm waiting for that, because if she doesn't bring that up, then this talk should not be about LGBTQIA plus. It should just be about transgender patients. So okay, we have example number one out of the way. When's the next one coming?
This individual had previously been seeing one of my colleagues who was decreasing her clinical time and needed to find providers in our clinic who would be willing to see her gender diverse patients.
Gender diverse patients. Okay. So you decided to volunteer your services as a specialist, even though you had no training and such. Okay.
Looking back on it, I
Uh-huh.
balk at the idea that she had to find providers who were willing. Shouldn't all clinicians be willing to meet with a patient and to help them in any way that they can?
Well, I don't know. Should I go to a clinician that knows nothing about hormone therapy and ask them to treat me regarding hormone therapy? I I don't know. I mean, I've gone to different dentists over time because some were more specialized than others in different things, but they all fall within orthodontics. Orthodontics. It just, I don't know.
We never ask our
Is that really an applause line? Okay.
We never ask our colleagues if they are willing to see a patient for their blood pressure or to manage their diabetes.
Yes, because these are all common bodily functions. Taking hormones to drastically change your body chemistry in opposition to your natural biological gender is a relatively new fad, isn't it? It's not very common. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the percentage of the population that is undergoing such treatment is still remarkably small compared to the number of people that need their blood pressure taken.
But when we're advocating for our queer patients, this is often necessary.
All right. I feel like I said this before a little bit. I feel like we're conflating things here, and she's doing it ostensibly to save herself a whole bunch of extra syllables in talking about the demographics she means to say, but by consolidating everything into the word queer and now simply talking about people who are undergoing hormone therapy, which is not applicable to most of the people under that umbrella. She's Yeah, okay. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. I hope so.
Because there are providers in every specialty and from every state who will refuse to treat LGBTQIA plus people regardless of their healthcare needs.
You need to give me an example of someone who was denied treatment simply on the basis of their sexual orientation. I mean, I could believe it. I could believe there's some kind of homophobic something or other out there doctor that decided to do this. But generally speaking, you need to give me an example where someone showed up to a clinic who just happened to be gay and somehow they were unable to treat this person.
I saw my first patient for gender affirming hormones.
Do you have anything else outside of gender affirming hormones? Because if you do not, then you're not talking about LGBTQIA plus. You're talking about T. You're only talking about the T. Why are you including a whole bunch of people that have nothing to do with your complaint?
In 2011.
Okay.
Since then, the number of providers who offer gender affirming care within our clinic has dramatically increased.
Then what are you complaining about?
We have intentionally recruited colleagues trained at our program and other family medicine residencies who are passionate about providing culturally competent, evidence-based, whole person care.
Culturally competent, evidence-based, whole person care. I'm on the verge of circling a word salad for that one, but okay.
To anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity.
You haven't even mentioned orientation yet and how that is at all applicable to special medical needs.
But hiring new faculty who are knowledgeable about queer health isn't enough.
No, hormone therapy. Unless you've got something else to offer here, you're looking for specialists in hormone therapy. You're aggrandizing yourself in your consolidation.
We feel an obligation to the medical students and residents who pass through our clinic to provide them with the necessary knowledge and skills to care for medically underserved populations.
Medically underserved that sounds like marginalization to me, at least in synonymous fashion. So circling that one on the board. Okay.
To that end, we make sure that our resident physicians and other learners participate in clinical experiences and receive education on all aspects of queer health.
On all aspects of hormone therapy, you mean? Every time she says queer health, until she gives us another definition or another example, it's just hormone therapy.
So that every family physician who graduates from our program has a strong foundation in these areas.
Like what?
This education includes, but is not limited to.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. All right. We're about to hear. All right. This is going to be a list. I mean, she might not be in like 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm going to take this as a list. Okay. Includes, but not limited to.
Being able to provide HIV PrEP.
What? Okay. I hate to tell you this, but HIV is not a queer disease. Yeah, I kind of learned this back in the 80s, strangely enough. They used to be called GRID. For those of you who are too young to know, yeah, before it was called AIDS, it was called GRID. You know what GRID stood for? Gay-related immune disease or immunodeficiency, depending on who you're talking to. And then some genius realized, hey, wait a second. Diseases don't know what sexual orientation you are. It's kind of irrelevant. Yeah, and then it got changed. So the first thing on your list is a disease that doesn't care about your orientation. Okay, well, I'm going to go to the bingo card and circle a list because that's where we're at. So, okay, all right. So HIV PrEP or HIV test prep or whatever.
Which is a highly effective method of preventing HIV, as well as gender-affirming care.
Gender-affirming care. All right, so you have GRID. I'm going to call it GRID because she's making it like somehow that's a specialty just for people who aren't straight. And gender-affirming PrEP. So again, applicable only specifically to people who are transgender, first and foremost. Okay, do you have anything else?
Including hormone therapy.
Including hormone therapy. So do you also do surgery?
To any adult who needs it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that she said adult. I'm glad that she at least made that, that limitation, that prerequisite. Okay.
Sadly, not all medical educators agree about the importance of queer health.
Okay, so wait. That's your list? 2 things. Testing for HIV or managing such, and hormone therapy. That encompasses queer amongst all those separate demographics. Okay.
And so this training is not uniformly offered to all primary care residents across the country.
Because hormone therapy is not a primary care. The answer to your question, the answer to your frustration is in the very terms you're using. Testing someone's blood pressure because all people have blood pressure, right? Testing somebody's breathing, right? Ear, nose, throat, and so on. All these commonalities for primary care. You're talking about specialized hormone therapy. You have the answer right in front of you, but okay.
As a result, there are many communities where queer folks find it next to impossible to find a provider who has been adequately trained to meet their needs.
If you do not give an active example of a specialized need that someone requires medically simply and only on the basis that they are not straight, you have mistitled this presentation and you are aggrandizing yourself beyond your own terms. So I'm still waiting. We're almost 5 minutes in to an 11-minute presentation. What else do you have to say?
What makes LGBTQIA plus healthcare so different from other primary care medicine?
Yes.
The answer
Uh-huh.
is nothing.
Really? Oh, okay. The answer is nothing. What was the title of this thing again? Why medical training should incorporate LGBTQIA plus needs. Okay, that indicates to me that there is something in particularly unique. And so far, the only thing you've listed is people using hormone therapy to attempt to transition their gender. So that is different from most people. Most people are not undergoing hormone therapy. And that's been your only active, reasonable example so far, except for grid. So, what do you mean nothing?
The medical knowledge that is needed to care for queer folks is essentially the same as we learn for heterosexual and cisgender populations.
Oh my God, you don't say. Do you mean to tell me that human beings are human beings, even if they're human beings and human beings who like certain human beings or like other kind of human beings? Do you mean to tell me that the biology doesn't really change whether you're a straight man or a gay man? Wow. You're not talking about that then. So why is this presentation titled or included in its title LGBTQIA plus? Why isn't it just about transgender patients? You're only talking about transgender patients. I was hoping for some kind of like more, I don't know, profound answer to my question about the title, but it all really comes down to my first suspicion, doesn't it?
Many providers are already offering gender affirming care.
How does a man who's simply gay need gender affirming care? Why are you including all these other demographics when they don't matter to your complaint?
Although they may not think of it that way. We refer patients to plastic surgeons for breast augmentations and reconstruction after cancer,
Yeah.
and we treat cisgender men for low testosterone,
Yeah.
and we provide postmenopausal cis women with hormone therapy.
Yeah, because women go through, you know, menopause and men have to deal with low testosterone counts sometimes as a factor of their biology. Uh, you know, lesbians also go through menopause. Gay men also may experience low testosterone counts. Strangely enough, their sexual orientation says nothing about their overall biology. The sexual dimorphism of people is not suddenly altered inextricably because of who they decide or whatever instincts tell them they are attracted to one person versus another. Why are you bringing up anyone other than transgender people? This talk should be called, special medical training for transgender patients. And really, if that had been the title, I'd be like, okay. And I probably even wouldn't have even looked at this because it would just made sense to me. It's like, sure, I could imagine scenarios where someone who's going through hormone therapy or has had particular surgeries or whatever else would probably need different medical needs, depending on the circumstances, than your average patient. And there'd be no mystery there. The only mystery to me right now is, why are you including everybody else who is effectively irrelevant to your complaint?
Although perhaps unintentional, picking and choosing which genders or orientations we affirm is discrimination.
Why does a medical doctor need to affirm someone's orientation? Where does that rest within your standard yearly checkup? Is there a part within the usual physical where the doctor says, "Excuse me, who do you enjoy rubbing your private parts against?" "Oh, that's very, very good." And then they pat you on the head or something? What maybe I missed out on that the last time I went to a physical. I mean, I've been asked before by a doctor if I've been sexually active, but anything beyond that never came up, and if it did, even in sort of like anecdotally, I wasn't then told, "You're such a good boy for being straight." It just didn't happen. I don't know about you guys.
And there is no place in medicine for discriminatory practices.
Uh, well, I guess fundamentally I would agree with you. Um, so why don't we treat everybody without consideration for their orientation in the first place? Why are you bringing it up? You are specializing in medical care for LGBTQIA plus people. You're telling everybody that straight people need not come to you effectively, and you're saying don't discriminate. Okay.
Prior to the coronavirus pandemic,
Maybe I should start putting that on the bingo card.
I would routinely see patients who were driving 14 hours round trip for a 20-minute office visit,
For what? Hormone therapy?
all because there were no providers in their area or their state who were willing to see them.
For what? Again, if you're talking about hormone replacement therapy, it is a specialized practice. If you're talking about basic primary medical care, one's sexual orientation does not affect that. What are you? Okay, you know what? I'm circling word salad. I am circling leaves out vital context. Um, I I don't know what to say. We're almost halfway through this. We're actually basically over halfway through this thing, and I haven't heard anything that tells me what any of the other letters in the litany have to do with her complaint.
At the height of COVID, the rise of virtual visits and telehealth improved access to these services.
So all they needed to do, wait, okay, I don't know if you know this. Zoom and Skype and everything else was available before the pandemic. So if all they needed was somebody to talk to, okay,
So that these patients no longer had to make such a long trip.
well then they didn't need to be seen physically by someone, did they? What were they going there for? What are you talking about?
Since the pandemic emergency ended, however, I no longer see patients in surrounding states via telehealth.
Why not?
Luckily, a few providers have emerged in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and Nevada who have recognized that this medicine isn't hard.
What medicine? What are you talking about?
And that with some additional training, it is possible to provide comprehensive primary care to queer folks.
I really wish you'd stop saying queer folks because it doesn't clarify anything at all. She takes all these demographics, smushes it into one title as though that is supposed to clarify something. I know I've said it. I know I'm a broken record. It is just so it's similar to me as when someone starts talking about people who are anti-immigration, as though people who are anti-illegal immigration are the same people who are against anti-immigration, like legal immigration, right? Or talking about immigrants as though they're all just one demographic and there's not something legally separating out the two categories. Okay.
And that if they have questions, they can always reach out to someone for help.
Great. I'm glad. What is the care you are providing a gay man that is special as compared to a straight man?
I got lucky.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure it was wonderful.
And an opportunity to provide this care fell into my lap.
I could say something that would be very third grade of me, but I'll just let it hang there.
I recognized that I didn't know enough, and so
Mhm.
I made a choice
Oh
to
my
seek
gosh.
additional education about
Hmm.
queer health.
What do you mean by queer health? Are you talking about hormone therapy?
But this shouldn't have been a choice I needed to make.
Why? Not every physician specializes in all things. Not a choice you should have had to make. What are you talking about?
Queer folks deserve culturally competent, evidence based healthcare.
What does that okay, that's the second time you've used those phrases. What do you mean? What is a culturally competent healthcare? What is an evidence-based healthcare in your determination? What are you talking about? I'm getting ready to hit the WTF button because I this is so frustrating.
Practiced by clinicians who will treat them with dignity and respect and who are knowledgeable about the medical topics that are relevant to them.
Yeah, okay. Again, you've effectively just repeated yourself for at least the second or third time. Clarification, examples. You're talking about evidence-based healthcare. Okay, give me some evidence-based presentation.
Most medical schools and residencies don't offer sufficient training on queer health.
I know, I know. I'm gonna keep doing it. Stop saying queer health. If you mean hormone replacement therapy, say hormone replacement therapy.
Especially gender affirming hormone therapy.
Well, especially. Okay, well, let's set aside the especially. Okay, we've already acknowledged that. Tell me about something else. Tell me that's not so especial, but still falls under this category of queer health as you've defined it. Because I haven't heard anything else. Okay. Cosmetic surgery, hormone therapy. That's it. What else is there?
And so providers like me must seek additional training in order to provide high quality care to this community.
Oh my gosh, you have to seek additional education in order to further your knowledge of medicine because you're the only person who has ever decided to specialize in a particular field of medicine who has had to go out and pay for or seek out additional education. Wow. Wow, I'd even say it's almost a kind of
Wowie, wow, wow.
yeah, it's almost like that. I okay, I think I'm going to circle plays victim. If you're a doctor, you're always having to further your education because medicine keeps changing. What aside from hormone therapy, what qualifies as queer healthcare? What?
This education should be a standard part of any medical training.
Why? What is the percentage of the population that requires hormone replacement therapy? Is that a primary care territory? Does that fall within the most common of ailments and so on?
But we have to do a better job than we are currently doing when providing this education.
You don't have anything else, do you? You've got hormone therapy and grid, and that's it. If you had something else, you would have said it by now, I would think. You're over halfway through your talk. Nothing? Okay.
All too frequently, medical
Mhm,
students and residents will learn about queer patients in a
mhm.
lecture where, for instance, the
For
clinical
instance.
case may state, a gay man presents with a rash.
Oh, so now we're just talking about orientation. Okay.
And is later found to have syphilis.
Okay. And as we know, syphilis only affects gay men, I
Or
guess.
HIV.
Yeah, wait, because these two things are completely one to the other. Okay.
Rarely, if ever, does the case language state, a heterosexual woman presents with joint pain. And if it did, stating the person's sexual orientation draws our attention to their sexual practices.
You're the one that highlighted HIV PrEP under queer healthcare. I don't know if you remember from, about maybe 6 minutes ago of your own presentation. What? Okay, keep going.
And encourages us to assume that the origin of the disease process, which the case is illustrating, is related to their sexual activities.
Well, it could be. How is HIV spread? Through sex. So if I find out that somebody has HIV, I would not be far off the mark in making an assumption that perhaps they got it through sexual contact, correct? Now, people get HIV in all sorts of different ways. You could have gotten it from a bite or a blood transfusion or any number of other things. But as a sexually transmitted disease, one might reasonably jump to the conclusion, although you wouldn't want to start, proceeding or acting necessarily on it, that it was transmitted through sexual activity. Okay, so someone's sexual history does become relevant at that point. But there are straight people who get HIV. There are straight people who get syphilis. I don't know. What would you like to have less information when it comes to someone's personal history with sexually transmitted diseases, or more information? And what would the thing saying it was a straight woman who had bone joint pain, like, you use really bad examples here to try to make a contrast.
We need to recognize that all people, not just those who identify as queer, are more than just their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Then why are you specializing in queer healthcare? You're the one that's saying there has to be a special consideration for these demographics, that there is specialized training necessary for demographics based on their sexual orientation primarily, even though the only thing you've brought up so far is hormone replacement therapy specifically for transgender people. You're contributing to this problem of segregating out healthcare. Or am I missing something?
We all experience the ups and downs of life.
Yes. And
like everyone, queer folks have high blood pressure and diabetes and low back pain.
Then why do you keep calling them queer folks? Why don't you make sexual orientation an irrelevancy? And why don't you talk about the specific demographic that you're actually referring to in this? You're the one making sexual orientation relevant in considerations for healthcare. You are. Have I walked through the looking glass on this one or something?
It is time that we incorporate queer identities into every aspect of medical education.
There's no such thing as a queer identity. I don't know what to tell you. There's no such thing. What does being gay tell you about someone? You just had a complaint that in a medical textbook or example, someone's orientation was mentioned in association with disease. And you complained, oh, well, that's supposed to imply something about their sexual history, this, that, or the other. Okay, well then, let's just take it out of the equation. Right? Well, I mean, that would be the more equitable and fair thing to do, because someone's sexual orientation does not define anything about who they are, does it? You seem to be arguing at cross purposes here. Your own examples contradict with your own complaints. And consequently, if I have to, keep using con words and so on, I'm going to do this.
What the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Right?
This is like somebody who says that they're anti-racist, telling me all about my white privilege.
But rather than pathologize their sexual practices or gender journeys,
rather than pathologize, you don't want to pathologize their sexual practices, and yet you've called it, for convenience's sake, queer healthcare. What are we doing here? Circling contradicts own point or argument. If I hadn't already, I certainly am now. And I'm also going to circle queer healthcare because she keeps saying it over and over again. And I understand that it's probably not a new buzzword or buzz phrase, but boy, oh boy, she's turning it into a mantra.
We need to acknowledge and celebrate their queer identities.
No, they're irrelevant. You just told us they should be irrelevant. What? See the patient as a human being in need of medical care, regardless of who they're attracted to in their private lives. You just told us healthcare is for everybody. Why are you categorizing people this way?
And then incorporate them into clinical cases about low back pain, because everybody experiences low back pain.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's irrelevant. When it comes to low back pain, strangely enough, sexual orientation is irrelevant. Why do you want to make it relevant?
We need to move past being LGBT friendly and move towards being LGBTQIA plus competent.
I don't even know I still don't know what that means. All you've brought up so far is hormone therapy and testing for AIDS. That's it. What do you mean when you say culturally competent, evidence-based healthcare? What are you talking about? Is that an applause line? Okay.
If you are a medical provider,
I certainly am not.
and you want to improve the care that you're offering to the queer community,
Yes.
seek out articles,
Educate yourself. Read a book. Anyway.
medical conferences, or webinars
On
to expand your knowledge.
what subjects?
If you are already providing care to queer patients, offer to serve as a mentor to a colleague who is eager to increase their knowledge and skills on topics related to queer health.
On what topics? You've had one topic so far. Hormone replacement therapy. That's it. I'm not even going to count the whole HIV testing thing because that's just standard practice across the board because strangely enough, HIV doesn't care about your orientation. So aside from hormone therapy for transgender patients, what are you talking about?
If you are a patient who needs this care, see if
What care?
your healthcare provider will consult with someone else who is more fluent in this area of medicine
What what are you talking about?
while still offering to see and treat you.
I honestly don't mean to be a broken record, but I am just purely and sincerely frustrated with the lack of clarity here. And with the deceptive title of this talk.
If you are a parent of a child who identifies as LGBTQIA+,
Okay, I gave you credit before for talking about surgery for consenting adults. Now you're stepping into some not so healthy territory.
please hug your kiddo and celebrate their courage and bravery by telling them that you love them unconditionally.
Even as they watch you march towards a conceivably and possibly terrible set of choices for your future.
And that you are proud of who they are.
Are you, though? Because we're not talking about who here. We're talking about what, aren't we?
Inside and out. If they have medical needs related to their queer identity,
such as what, might I ask?
ask your child's primary care provider for local resources that will support and affirm their authentic selves.
So provide minors with hormone replacement therapy and or surgery. I see you're not being specific here in particular. I can only imagine why. How brave is that of you to couch your language.
Remember, we as physicians took an oath.
Yes, you did. And what is the most famous element of that oath?
At the beginning of our training, to first do no harm.
Yeah. And what were you just encouraging likely zealotous parents to do with their minor children again?
The medical needs of the queer community are very similar to care that we are already providing.
Then what is this talk even about?
We can continue to keep this oath by expanding our scope, increasing our knowledge, and growing our skills.
Well, you didn't bother to do that on the talk with us. Aside from hormone therapy, what kind of medical care is specific to a lesbian or a bisexual person or an asexual person? What?
To serve this deserving yet underserved population.
How are they underserved if they experience the same raft of medical problems that everybody else experiences simply on the basis of being a human being? What? I'm gonna do it again because I can't help myself.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
For as many times as I asked a variant of the question, it deserves it.
No one should have to travel 14 hours for a prescription.
It sounds like they didn't. They just had to give you a Skype call.
Whether for blood pressure or for HIV prep or for hormones.
That's it. HIV prep and hormones. That's all you've got. You can't name anything that is specialized to a gay man or a bisexual woman. Why are you including all the other letters of the alphabet in your complaint? Probably because you're trying to draw in the biggest demographic of patients, aren't you? Jesus.
There may be a projected shortage of primary care physicians.
You're not talking about primary care. You're really not. You haven't mentioned any primary care stuff except for back pain or joint pain, which again, is not specific to someone on the basis of their orientation.
But there does not have to be a shortage of evidence-based, culturally competent healthcare.
Third time's the charm, and it still doesn't make any more sense every time you say it.
If we broaden our knowledge base and are willing to provide it, because we should be, and we can be, and we must be.
It's so dramatic. The drama has me on the edge of my seat. Oh, no, wait, it's just my bad posture. That must be where my bad back comes from.
Willing to provide it.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hey, Weaver, will you take the red snapper or what's in the box? Well, unfortunately, with this one, I took what was in the box. And what's in the box? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Weaver, you so stupid. Yeah, so this is my fault. I was expecting something interesting. It's a TEDx. What more could I ask for? What more could I ask for? All right, well, that's the talk. Let's move on to the bingo card. Let me pop this into ye old address bar real quick and then update it. And this is where we're at. Oh my gosh. Look at all those circles. Circles after circles. Thank you, Corey Suzuki. If it makes her feel any better, my friend always thought the HOV lane was the HIV lane. Now, wouldn't that be something if you got to go a little faster on the freeway because they're like, oh, well, I guess because you have a shorter lifespan. Thank you, Corey. HOV, HIV. There you go. Okay, well, let me go over the bingo card one more time by myself. If you have any arguments for squares to be circled, hold on to them. I will get to you momentarily. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. She never used the terms as far as I can tell. I might need an argument for that one. Mind reading or assumes motives? Mind reading or assumes motives. I don't know that no other primary care doctor will treat someone on the basis of their orientation, as though that comes up. Like, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if there's something that fits her. Patriarchy. She never talked about men in particular. Feminism. Never really focused on women all that much. Systemic or institutional. I am going to circle that one, because the case she was making is there was an institutional discrimination against people on the basis of their, or I'm going to say orientation, even though she never proved that or offered any evidence to that. For an evidence-based healthcare provider, she didn't really provide any evidence. Anecdote that probably never happened. She never really gave us many anecdotes. I mean, I could believe someone had back pain or joint pain or had to be tested for HIV or so. Sure. Okay. White supremacy. She never really talked about race. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about herself or her family. Weightless example or non sequitur. The entire talk was absolutely weightless. I mean, the title alone was weightless. Her inclusion of all the other letters of the alphabet was weightless because it had nothing to do with her talk. Privilege. I mean, by implication, everybody else had the privilege of healthcare, and then everyone within these demographics were actively being denied something. What that something is, I don't know. Culturally competent something. So I don't know. All right. Collectivizes own demographic. See, I'm not sure if her saying I am one of a small number of healthcare providers that provide, I don't know if that counts. I'm a little iffy on that. I was hoping for something a bit more generalized, like as a woman or as a person of hair color or something, but I didn't hear that. So I'm open for arguments, but I'm not quite sure. Self-vilification or wretchedness. I didn't hear anything that was self-vilifying. The closest she might have come to was even then, when she was talking about having to go out and educate herself, it was because she was deprived of such education previously, which is kind of plays into playing victim. So no, I didn't hear any self-vilification. Economic disparity. She didn't really talk about the cost of anything. She talked about the number of miles someone would have to drive to get to such a clinic, which I guess you could equate with a financial hardship. But it's a bingo square. I don't know. Does that make enough sense? I'll leave that to you guys. Benevolent condescension. Boy, howdy. Boy, howdy. Especially in not mentioning anything that was relevant to any other demographic than the one she was so focused on. And kept saying queer healthcare and trying to get away with that. It just didn't work. Deceptive statistics. The closest she came to deceptive statistics was talking about the number of healthcare providers, I guess, were down nationwide on average, but I'm still not quite sure what that had to do with anything. So that could also count as a weightless example, but she didn't really bring up statistics elsewise. And lastly, microaggressions and conscious bias. Yes. And she was making accusations of the bias within other healthcare providers who suddenly didn't know how to treat someone because of their queerness or something. So that is the card as I have it. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, put them in the chat now, and I will consider them. Let's see. WTF did we just watch? I know. The title caused me to be curious, and my assumptions about the most obvious that made sense to me were affirmed pretty quickly. I stated it ahead of time because I was like, well, I can't think of anything beyond this demographic that would need special medical consideration. So I'm curious to know how it applies to all these different orientations. But there was nothing there. Let's see. 14-hour drive. Yeah, she said that some of the people coming to her clinic were driving 14 hours before the pandemic. And now they don't have to because other specialized clinics or something have opened up in Montana and elsewise and that kind of deal. Let's see. All right, here we go. Mystery. No deceptive statistics this time. I listened intently for them. She was edging close, but no statistic. Yeah. So that's kind of a one and done on that one. Let's see. Dexter's Killer Lab. Diversity. Queer folks are an underserved demographic. Anecdotes. Routinely, patients drive 14 hours for a 20-minute appointment. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I'm not quite sure about the diversity one there. Underserved demographic just means marginalization. I think that's why I circled that one. I was looking for either the words diversity, equity, or inclusion, or something that is commonly associated with, but I didn't really hear it so much. But yeah, patients driving 14 hours for a 20-minute appointment. Kieverdam, she said gender diverse, DEI. Okay, now you've added on to Dexter's thing. Okay, what do we think about 14 hours for 20 minutes? And what do we think about gender diverse for DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion? Let's see. Mike R. Scribe like her saying that queers are getting denied emergency life-saving care is an anecdote that again, because she collected everybody into one demographic, one heading. Yeah, that's true. You know what? Between 14 hours for 20 minutes and this, glittering generalization by her consolidating all these different demographics into one term, queer, I'm going to circle anecdote that probably never happened. Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, actually, no. Yeah, anecdote probably never happened. That's what I meant. So circling that one. Now, as far as what was the other one? Oh yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion. Do we think gender diverse equals DEI? Daryl Odell says diversity, equity, inclusion. She included all the other letters of the alphabet, even though they weren't needed. You know what? That's a tiebreaker. If I wasn't sure before, I'll give you that one. That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, circling diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, that's true. That's true. She did pull everybody under the same tent in that one. Why do I have a little green spot there? I don't like that. I don't like having a little green spot there. I want to get rid of that. How do I get rid of that? Where's my little? Can I get rid of it? Mostly. There we go. Okay. I don't know. I'm a stickler for keeping the card, as tidy as possible. Okay. Let me save that and update that. There we go. All right. Who's next? Let's see. Jim Healis. She thinks hormone therapy is life-saving care. Well, that's also true. That's a little. Anyway, gender diverse is not DEI. Well, not all by itself, but it's a combination of things. Let's see. She collectivized the LGBT demographic. Yeah, but it wasn't her own demo. Well, okay. You see, here's the thing. I have no idea, and I don't particularly care what her orientation is. She never said. It never came up. So she never talked about her own demographic. She collectivized many demographics, but she wasn't speaking on behalf of an entire swath of the population. As far as I can tell, unless somebody's got an argument elsewise. Let's see. Underserved communities is another way to put economic disparity. That is true. Okay. Here's my only pushback. She wasn't talking about underserved in the sense of economically. She was talking about underserved in the sense of lack of specialty, right? She was talking about the lack, she kept hammering on this, the lack of doctors that were educated in these specific culturally competent evidence-based healthcare practices. So is it underserved because they couldn't pay or underserved because there weren't enough specialists around? I'm leaning towards the latter because that was the focus of her talk. So I think I need something else. Let's see. The hair you pointed out, first thing about her. Okay, but as I said, unless she stated explicitly, what am I supposed to assume from her hair color? It'd be the same thing as if I tried to assume something about the nature of her makeup on the basis of her skin color. No. She never mentioned. I don't have any reason to say otherwise or make guesses about it. And it wasn't a part of the talk. So if she had mentioned it, maybe it'd be relevant. But she didn't, and hair color doesn't say anything to me. I'm just holding to my principles here. As an ally, well, I will say that at the very least, you could say she's an ally because she was very, very particular on who she wanted to serve medically and healthfully. So as an ally, she represented the LGBTQ collective. I need something from the talk. I understand there's certain things we can extrapolate from, but I want to challenge you guys. Give me something from the talk that qualifies as collectivizes own demographic or economic disparity. I realize we're one square away, or self-vilifies. One of these things would get us another bingo. Or a mind reading assumes motives, right? I mean, I'm sure there's one in there, but you have to tell me. Adcast, she collectivized doctors that do these services. Okay. Now, I'm not being like resistant for the sake of being resistant. I just want to make sure, that I wasn't just completely alone in the woods on that one. And with that, if you can believe it.
Bingo. What? Of course!
We have our first bingo. Might not be the last. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? Korizuki, the only way I can equate economic disparity is by implying something from her want for more people to be trained like her and more doctors for queer affirming health. Yeah, that's not so much economic disparity as it is lack of options for people that are requiring this very special care, whatever it is. So, yeah. She said that some couldn't afford going to another state. Did she say that? And I'm not challenging you. I don't remember her saying could not afford. Did she say could not afford? I mean, I'll believe it if somebody else will second you on that. Because you did talk about that a lot. People like traveling here, there, and otherwise. Let's see. Dexter's Kill Out. I'm surprised it's not a blackout. I've never heard such a long talk about nothing. Oh, Dexter. Oh, Dexter. Oh, to be as young and naive again about TEDx talks. Oh, Dexter. Oh, man. Well, I should show you, or you should maybe, unfortunately, randomly look up, 15-minute long TEDx talks where we circled like 5 squares or something because there was nothing going on. Oh, I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Meh is going to check. Okay, Luke Skywalker 2 says 14-hour trip is an implication for economic. Yeah, again, like I said, yeah, but I already used 14 hours for 20 minutes for anecdote that probably never happened. If she explicitly mentioned affordability for this, then I'll circle it. And I apologize that I can't easily sort of go back in time and try to re-listen to the whole thing because I know that she started talking about 14-hour things. So if you can give me a timestamp on it, well, I'll get the link in the description is going to go to the full talk, and I did edit out the beginning and the end of it or whatever. But I'm willing to believe if someone can quote her for me. And if we go too far into this and I have to wrap up, then I'll certainly consider it after the fact. She said drove 14 hours even though they may not have been able to afford it. All right. Between Meh and Advocatus Diaboli, 2 trusted members of the audience, I suppose I can believe that she mentioned the cost of a 14-hour drive.
I had a dog, and his name was...
What?
I had a dog, and his name was...
Bingo!
Of course!
Our second bingo, we got an X bingo. X gonna give it to you. All right, guys. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? I'm surprised. Maybe I missed it. Does anybody have an argument for mind reading or assumes motives? because I feel like there's one there. I feel like there's one just hanging out there. Tier Alexander, Scribe, I demand you allow more doctors on that moon that specialized in undead healthcare. I can't afford to hitchhike to Earth on a comet and keep begging Elon for rides back to the moon. You're going to have to justify the cost there, Tier. You might have to sell your top hat. I mean, doctors and healthcare on the moon is at a premium right now. There's only so much Dog Cat Fox can do. I mean, he's still trying to work on his medical degree. Isn't that right, Dog Cat Fox? Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah, see, that was Dog Cat Fox for give me more time and send me money. Yeah. Let's see. Advocate. She assumed patients couldn't find doctors because the doctors wouldn't see them for being LGBTQ. Oh, as far as the mind reading? Well, and she did set that up, didn't she? She really did set that up by consolidating everything into queer healthcare, not giving anything of everything else. And I think you could tell by now, that's the one thing that annoyed me the most about this talk, is that she was generalizing. If this talk had been called, what's the full title again? Why medical training should incorporate transgender needs, I probably wouldn't have even brought it up. I'd be like, okay. Because I could imagine that. I wouldn't need a whole lot of convincing. It's all these other letters. So assumes motives, other doctors being bigoted. Yeah, that is true. And I think that's the one that I was sort of hoping one of you guys would argue for, because I didn't want to like sort of jump at it. But yeah, it makes sense to me. Fair enough. And
bingo.
What? Bingo! Yeah!
Of course! Of course!
Our third bingo, and perhaps the last one of the show. Let's see. I have had doctors that won't see me because I have fibromyalgia. Okay. Is that because they don't know how to treat fibromyalgia? Or I'm curious. What is their excuses and or explanations for that? I admittedly don't know much about fibromyalgia, except I've had some acquaintances of acquaintances suffer from it, and I've heard bits and pieces there and otherwise about it. Let's see. How do you feel about my plans for a space laser, Scribe? ASL. Okay, is that American Sign Language or age, sex, location, or is it? Because ASL means a whole bunch of different things depending on the context. As far as a space laser is concerned, I've already got one. I already have a space laser. It was left here, or I should say the pieces of it were left here by the Red Skull after the Avengers came and blew up his space laser that he was going to use to take over the Earth, but I like salvaged it. And so I think it's got about like one good shot left in it before it blows up. So I'm kind of saving it for a rainy day. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to play more old arcade games. Let's see. Yes, they can't cure it. They can't fix it. Doctors have egos. So if a doctor is confronted with something that they can't be the hero for, they just say, nah. That's kind of sad. Geez. Awesome, Scribe. Yeah. I mean, I might have light in my name for other reasons. Anyway, I think I'm going to call it there. So 3 bingos, a talk that was decidedly deceptive in its advertising, which is more than frustrating to me. I was hoping to at least learn something new or have someone try to convince me of something new. But also, it is illegal for doctors to not see a patient based on their sexual orientation. True. But as we saw, or as we heard, I should say, she never mentioned sexual orientation. As far as like people turning people away for that. She talked about people being turned away or someone not being able to provide a very specialized kind of care, which is the only one she ever brought up. And otherwise, her only explanation for complaining about this was in some textbook somewhere, it mentioned the theoretical patient's orientation in relation to disease, which is exactly what she did. But I guess that's a bad thing when somebody else says it. Anyway, let's see. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else, but yeah. So I'm going to look into getting a new microphone or trying to figure out, is this just the best settings and I need to touch nothing else anymore and just leave it all alone because this is functional, even if I can't hit the high notes anymore without it cutting out. Because I would like to have, after all these years, almost 8 years of being on YouTube, you'd think I'd have at least a reasonable audio setup by this point, but apparently not the case. Let's see. Any other notes? Oh, yeah. Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern will be the Sunday Stream, my weekly digest show where I go over interesting stories that happened over the week. And boy, I've got a few that might interest you and might call back to previous streams and or series of mine. I guess you'll have to find out on Sunday. Also, on Tuesdays, most times, you can find me over on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel, looking at pop culture and movies and comic books and all types of stuff for the Tuesday show over on there, Midnight's Edge After Dark at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can find me here for TED Excellence, or I'll look at another off-brand TED Talk or an actual TED Talk, which is even more depressing. Also, you know about the Discord server? Well, let me tell you about the Discord server. I have a Discord server, and there's a link to the Discord server in the chat right now. If you'd like to join the Discord, all you have to do is click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and have earned the right, the title, entitlement, the privilege of joining the Discord server. Today's secret word is 14 hours. Just say hello 14 hours, and I'll know that you watched this show. Also, you know, it's something else that I don't shill enough that I probably should just for the sake of doing so. I have a merch store. You know that? I have a merch store. There's a link in the description. I rarely ever mention it. I was just before the show drinking my hot chocolate out of my TED Excellence Scribe Light mug. Oh man, it came out so nice. It looks so good. Maybe you'd like one too. Anyway, if you'd like one, they're down there in the description, as well as my Pepperjack shirt and my Moonbase Crater Valley shirt and a whole bunch of other things. So if you, for some reason, happen to enjoy the many memes that I've created over the course of time on here, at least a few of them are represented in tchotchke merchandise form in my merch store. Let's see. Anything else? Nothing comes to mind right now. I'm sure if something else happens, I will let you know. As well, follow me on the Twitter or the X at scribe_light. Of course, always go to the Discord server for other updates on different things and basic chatting and such. I keep thinking there's something else I want to mention. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's my father's birthday. And he's an old man. But despite that, I love him very much. And I'm glad he's feeling better. And I'm glad he's enjoying his day. And I'm particularly irritated that even though I was the conscientious child and waited until a reasonable hour in the morning after my dad has usually been sleeping in, because he's entitled to do that, I called to wish him happy birthday, but he was busy for some reason when I called. And so he said, "Can I call you back?" And I said, "All right." So about an hour and a half later, I call him back, and he's having a burrito that he got from a food truck. Apparently it's very good. And I sang him happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. You look like a monkey and smell like one too. And he says, "I probably smell worse." And I said, "I know. I was just being kind." And then we talked for a bit. And then I made the most important question of all. I said, "Now, am I the first of your children to call you?" And he's like, "No." And I said, "Well, I mean, was I the first to call back at 10 a.m., you know, when you were busy?" And he was like, "No." And so I had to, not be the best child today on my father's birthday. So I immediately called Sister Scribe, and I told her that I claim firstborn privilege, and that at any point in the future where we are to celebrate our parents, I get first dibs. She is to call me first to check to see if I have done the well-wishing, and if I have not, she waits until I have. because there are some things in life that I've earned by tenure. Dang it. That's how fights between my sister and I go. Oftentimes we're fighting over who gets to love our parents more effectively. Thank you, Kieverdam. Anniversary stream next month. That's true. That is true. October 11th, Friday, October 11th will be my 8th anniversary here on YouTube. I am pondering what to do about such an event. It'll probably be sending out a whole bunch of invites to people and saying, hey, if you happen to have a free 5 or 10 minutes and want to pop on and say hi, it'd be great to hang out with you for a little bit kind of thing, and just have sort of a celebrity show of various people and give them enough notice that they can show up. As far as like what we'll do during the stream, probably a bunch of TEDx's or maybe looking at some of my old videos or something. I'm not quite sure. But yes, that'll be October 11th. Time to be determined. It'll probably go on for several hours, and looking forward to that. But I've got a little time to plan on it. But anyway, after all that rambling and completely silly anecdote about my sister, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you so much for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Let's see. Oh, Advocate suggested Mad Libs. Well, I'll do some Mad Libs. I haven't done Mad Libs in a while. I have to do that. Let's see. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers and GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. It is very much appreciated. And with that, everyone, hope you enjoyed yourselves. If you like this kind of thing, leave a like on the way out and or share this stuff around. I'd appreciate it if you did. I'm hoping to hit 8,000 subscribers by my 8th anniversary. Knock wood, crossed fingers. Knock Formica, pardon me. And everyone, have a good rest of your Thursday evening. Have a good Friday ahead of you. Have a good weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. And if you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.